Hey guys, Tammy here, and in this video, I'm going to talk about life lessons in child custody. Now, look, when we're going through these types of trials, there's a lot of things that we learn and that it teaches us. And these things not only serve us in the midst of this kind of trial, but these are things that will also serve you later on down the road. And so that's why, I decided to talk about life lessons because yes, it's applicable to what you're going through, but it's also something that's going to continue to serve you. Before I dive into this detail, let me just remind you, if you like this content, find a lot of value in it, please hit like on this video and also subscribe so that you get notified as new videos are released. And as always, please feel free to share it on social media. When we're going through these types of situations, it's real easy for us to feel like this is how it will always be. Okay. I'm going through walking through my own trial right now, as a lot of you know. And so with the loss of Thomas about a year and a half ago. And whatever our trial is, whether it's, I also had the trial of going through a divorce, about 20 years ago, dealing with custody issues. I lost my mom suddenly about 10 years ago. Now I've lost Thomas suddenly about a year ago. And there are things as you're going through this where it feels like this is how it's going to be from now on. When you start to feel that way, it can really bring you down. It can really make you start to feel, down and depressed and like, what's the point? And, I have days where I struggle to get out of bed and, all that kind of thing. Like I'm sure that you guys have too, especially when things get really high conflict, or you're dealing with somebody that's very abusive, or you've had a lot of false accusations and things like that, where it feels like you just can't win, right? You just can't get a break. I talked to 2 or 3 different clients today, all of whom seem to have recently gone to court and not gotten the result that they wanted. They feel like the other parent won. And so when we're going through that, it can just really beat you down. And that seemed to be like the theme for today. So luckily I was doing pretty good. I was in pretty strong spirits. And so I fortunately had the wherewithal to kind of lift them up, which is part of my job when you're going through this. But, courts are human. They don't always get it right in the first instance, but that does not mean that all hope is lost. And when we're in that moment, it feels like we're going to lose everything, but in reality, you're not most of the time. And so if you can kind of get clear on what's the worst case scenario, what's the worst thing that happens if I go in? And then if I can accept that, then everything else from that point is a bonus, right? It's an even better outcome. And so a lot of this has to do with reframing and looking at your perspective of how you're dealing with it. Like in the case of losing Thomas, I can look at it as, well, you know what? I've now survived probably the most difficult thing, I think, except for maybe losing a child. I don't know. Fortunately, I have not had to endure that trial. But having a child pass away or something, I feel like would probably be even more difficult. But I always tell people, this isn't a pain contest. Okay. So one person's pain over grief, another person's pain over their divorce, loss of different people or whatever. It's all different. The relationships are different. We process differently. And so you have to have grace with yourself. You can't just say, oh, I should be over this. I should be done with this. I should be moved on. And a lot of times it's hard to let go of that resentment and that feeling towards the other parent, especially if that parent you feel has inflicted a lot of this damage or, this unnecessary suffering that you're going through. The good news about it is this is a season in life. It is this situation that you're in. It has not come to stay. It has come to pass. Right. I heard this from Les Brown today. I was listening to, he's kind of like an old school motivational speaker like Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins is a little more well known and a little bit newer, but Les Brown is kind of old school. but it has a lot of really great wisdom. And I was listening to him today on my morning walk. When he said that, this has not come to stay, it has come to pass. And I thought, that's so true. We're walking through this season of our life and we have this cross to bear right now. But that doesn't mean this is how it's always going to be. And I think one of the things that we have to be really careful of in child custody in particular is sort of wishing our life away, right? Like for me, it would be real easy to say, oh, I wish I was a year further down the road. I wish I was that. I wish I was this. And the problem with that is you don't know what that next year brings or what that next 2 years, brings or whatever. So I'm wishing that things would fast forward. What if I'd been wishing that in the year before Thomas died and actually had some kind of power to make that happen? Would have fast forwarded myself right into the season of his death, right? So you have to treasure every moment, especially with your children, because the age that they are, whatever it is, it won't come around again, right? And so if you're spending that whole time stressed and, worried about your court case or the other parent or what they're doing or what they're saying to the kid or any of those things, and that's your focus, guess what you're missing out on? You're missing out on that time with your children, and you can't get time back, right? Time is a finite supply for all of us. We don't know where the end of that finite supply is, but when it comes and you're out of time. So you can't get more of it. People, we get really focused on money in life, right? And earning money. And it's kind of interesting because I always say to people like, they'll talk about, oh, my divorce is so financially devastating. Mine was too, but you know what? You can always earn more money. That's possible. That's within your capability, but you won't get that time back with your children, and I think this is something that Thomas in particular was very well grounded about. And he gave a lot financially during his divorce in order to be able to get her to be more flexible in giving him more time with the children, because he saw that as the top priority. He's like, I don't care. I can always make more money, do whatever. Thank God he wasn't focused on that, because he didn't end up needing enough money to live to be 90, right? He was only 61. So if he had been focused on the money, what would have happened? He would have passed, and then all that money would be sitting here for me and the kids. I mean, which granted would make life easier for us in some ways. So it kind of helps the people that you leave behind. But if that had been his focus over the relationships with us, I don't think that would have been, a good trade for him. One of the things you have to do when you're going through these seasons is you have to have a lot of patience, because it feels like you need to do something right now. And honestly, when you're walking through a trial, sometimes the best thing you can do is take a step back and breathe and give yourself some time and space to heal so that you can figure out what the next logical move is. Because many times in child custody, our emotions and our reactiveness are the number one thing that sink us. If we can take a step back and take a deep breath and try to not rush into things, rush into our responses to our ex, rush in to file with the court right away, rush in to retaliate as soon as they do something we don't like. All those kinds of things are those emotional reactions that usually end up backfiring down the road. So your number one goal is to have some patience. And then the second thing that I think is critical in these situations is being consistent in your actions. Sometimes I'll talk to a client and we'll kind of talk through a situation and we'll create a plan, right? And we'll say, okay, so the kid calls from the other parent's house on the cell phone the other parent got for them, but you don't allow that cell phone to come into your house. And so we're not going to answer the child when they're on the other parent's time on that cell phone, right? And then, so that'll be the plan, right? Okay, this is what we're going to do. And then something happens. The other parent sends a message or does something or says something to where the client is then checking in with me again and going, hey, this just happened. Do I need to do something different? Am I still like not answering the phone? And it's like, no, stick with the plan. One of the things I think that gets people really in trouble a lot in child custody situations is flakiness, just bouncing around, bouncing back and forth on their decisions. Because one time you answer the phone, the next time you don't, then you appear flaky and it's like, well, why are you answering sometimes and not others? And you're picking and choosing. And, it makes you seem less credible because you're being inconsistent in how you're handling things. So even if the court doesn't necessarily agree with how you're handling things, I think that being consistent still helps your credibility, even if the court says, you know what, not the decision that I would have made, not the decision I think was the best decision, but at least this person has the courage of their convictions and, they're trying to hold that line and do what they need to do. You want to be patient, you want to be consistent, and that is how you are going to move through this and eventually have success. The success isn't going to come immediately. It's not going to be immediate gratification, but we're not trying to win the battle. We're trying to win the war. Okay. And you've got to keep yourself focused on that. I'm going to close with a little story that also I heard as I was listening to Les Brown. He shared this little story and I thought it was very interesting. I did not know this. Some of you may know this, but he said a Chinese bamboo tree it has a very hard nut. So when you go to grow it, he said for 5 years, you have to water and fertilize that nut every day. And if you miss a day, it's done. It doesn't grow. It doesn't ever become a bamboo. But if you water it and you fertilize it every single day for 5 years, then after 5 years, the bamboo will sprout and it will grow 90 feet within a 6-week period. I think sometimes that's how this custody stuff works is we're doing all these things. We're being consistent. We get frustrated. Sometimes we fall out of consistency because we don't see the plant coming up through the soil, even though we're watering and we're fertilizing. And so then we get frustrated. This takes consistent action in order for you to eventually get that 90-foot bamboo that you're trying to get. I hope that encourages you. I hope you guys are having a great day. If you would like to talk to me and learn more about my coaching services, you can go to Divorce University Online /VIP-coaching. There's a link on that page that you can utilize to make an appointment to talk to one of my staff and learn more about how we might be able to support you on this journey. See you guys next time.